Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we got another off-season preview video here to discuss. We're looking at two teams who've been eliminated from playoff contention in the East, and that is the Ottawa Senators and New Jersey Devils. The Sens and Devils have been eliminated. We'll see why they were eliminated. We'll look at their pending UFAs, RFAs, and draft capital for this upcoming offseason, and we'll see how they can improve in the offseason to get better for next year. We'll get to all of that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Talker channel. Before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you all for your support and the video guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below so we'll discuss in today's video. Now, we've got another off-season preview video here to discuss. We've got two teams who were eliminated last week, and that is the Ottawa Senators and the New Jersey Devils. Now, both these teams, I was personally expecting to make the playoffs this year. I thought the Senators made some good moves in the offseason to get them back into the playoffs. I thought the Devils were coming off of a really good season. I thought they would have been able to duplicate that. I even had them winning the President's Trophy. That was completely wrong. So both these teams are missing the playoffs. I'm a little bit surprised by that. So we'll go over first the Senators and then the Devils, and we'll see what happened for those two teams. Now for the Senators, three reasons why I think they missed the playoffs. First, bad goaltending. They have one of the worst goaltending in the league right now. In the offseason, they moved on from Chabot, who was not really an overly good goaltender for them. They got Jonas Korpisalo, who looked fantastic during the regular season with LA and at points in the playoffs as well. So I think was hoping that they were going to get a really good goaltender here in Korpisalo, and he hasn't really done overly well. He has a sub 900 save percentage and over 3 GAA. He hasn't looked overly good. Forsberg's actually taken a hit too, also having a above 3 GAA and a below 900 save percentage. So neither one of their two goalies have looked good. When Sogaard's come up, he's also not looked overly good. So that's really been a horrible bad thing for the Senators, and I think the goaltending is a major reason as to why the Senators team did wind up missing the playoffs. They're bottom 10 in the goals against department and could finish as low as like bottom 6 or potentially even bottom 5 by the end of the season. So we'll have to wait and see exactly where they finish, but the Senators are not looking overly good when it comes to goals against, and that big reason as to why that is because of the Senators goaltending situation. Another thing is their slow starts. We had seen this over the past couple of years. Almost had a slow start, had a solid finish this season, but was never enough to get themselves back into a playoff spot. They continue to have bad starts. They're actually hovering right around the 500 mark at the quarter mark of the season, which is pretty good, but by the halfway point, they're already 8 games below 500. It never looked really good for them after that, and the slow start I think is another reason as to why I saw the Senators team did not look good. They had a slow start, fired head coach DJ Smith, and were able to bring in Jacques Martin as head coach, and they never really played well for Jacques Martin until after a couple of games. So that's a really big problem as to why they missed the playoffs. So that's another reason. And then the off-ice distractions. I mean, this team was sold last year, so they had a new owner. That was a little bit of a distraction. They then had the Dadonov situation, which cost them a first-round pick in the next couple of years. That was an off-ice distraction. Yeah, the Shane Pinto gambling suspension, that was an off-ice distraction. So there was a ton of off-ice distractions this year for our Senators that held on their heads. So maybe it's not as big as like a slow start or bad goaltending as to why they missed the playoffs, but it's another big reason as to why this team wound up missing the playoffs. So interesting stuff there for Ottawa. So in my opinion, the bad start, the horrible start by halfway point, the bad goaltending that they got this year, and the off-ice distractions were the three main reasons as to why this team wound up missing the playoffs. Going over to our pending UFAs, RFAs, and draft capital for this upcoming offseason. If you look at their UFAs, not a whole bunch on the list. You have winger Dominic Kubalik, who has 11 goals and 15 points in 72 games. Hasn't worked out overly well in Ottawa, and I would expect he probably leaves. You have Yuri Shmelka. You also have Ruke Charter, Matthew Highmore, who are all decent depth defensemen, have gotten time at the NHL level, but are mostly spare forwards at the AHL level. Charter's gotten 3 points in 37 games. Shmelka has an assist in 18 games, and Highmore has 2 assists in 7 games. So they've all had some opportunities at the NHL level, but have mostly been AHL players. So I could see maybe be brought back on short-term one-year deals, especially Charter, but I wouldn't expect them all to be back. And they also have defenseman Dylan Hetherington, who hasn't gone to any NHL action this year, but has been a decent spare defenseman in years past, and has been a decent at the AHL level this year. So I could see him be brought back, but those are really the only big pending UFAs that the Senators do have. Look at the pending RFAs. There's a long list of RFAs here that the Senators do have. You have Shane Pinto, who's been fantastic ever since coming off his suspension. 9 goals, 18 assists, 27 points in 39 games. Been a fantastic third-line center for that Senators team, so I think he's definitely going to be back on like a more of a longer-term deal. You got Cruikshank and Reinhardt, who are two young prospects that could have futures at the NHL level. Cruikshank even had 30 points in 13 NHL games, so I could definitely see those two guys be brought back. And you also have Igor Sokolov, who doesn't have an NHL game this year. Parker Kelly, who has 18 points in 78 games. And Boris Kachuk, with 13 points in 57 games. Kachuk was claimed off of waivers. All three three of those guys are decent bottom six forwards, and I could see all of those guys be brought back, but I could also see him maybe be considered to be let go, so I have to say on that. You're going to have a couple of decent depth AHL defensemen who could definitely be eventually NHL defensemen, and Lassie Thompson and Max Gunet. I could definitely see them both be back, but I wouldn't be overly surprised if either one of them were let go, so I have to say on that. You also have Eric Branstrom, who has 3 goals, 19 points in 74 games. I could see him be brought back as like a solid third pair defenseman. Hasn't had an overly bad season, but I could also see him be let go and maybe be traded as well, so we'll have to say on that. And they also have Matt Sogard, who had 6 games played, had 8.59 save percentage and a 4.06 GA. Did not have an overly good season this year at the NHL level. It was looked good at the AHL level, and I think he still has a future at the NHL level, so I definitely expect him to be brought back. Those are the pending RFAs for the Senators for this upcoming offseason. Then you look at the All Senators draft capital for his current season. They have 8 picks for this upcoming draft. They have theirs and the Boston Bruins first round picks, so they have 2 first round picks, which is fantastic news for them. They also have their own second round pick. They have no third round picks for this upcoming draft, but they do have theirs, the Red Wings, the Lightning, and the Panthers fourth round picks, so that's really good news. They're going to have a lot of fourth round picks. They also have their own 5th, but no 6th or 7th, so they have a ton of fourth round picks, a couple first round picks, a couple other picks sprinkled into there, so they do have a decent amount of draft capital, not overabundance, but I do have a little more than they were originally scheduled to be with, so very good stuff there for Ottawa. I think they can definitely use some of that draft capital to either improve this team or make this team better for the future by drafting some good players. And then if you look at the 5 ways I think I can see the Senators improve in the offseason to get better for next year. 1, make a change for a starting goaltender. This goaltending, obviously, like I said, it's not going to cut it right now. Force extension in 5 year of his deal, I think is a $2.75 million AAV. He did not look overly great this year. You have Korpisalo, who's going to be entering, I think, the second year of either a 4 or 5 year deal with AAV of $4 or $5 million. I can't remember at this point in time, but Korpisalo is still on a longer term deal. It's going to be extremely hard to move him. Force are going to be a little bit easier to move in the fact he's entering the 5 year deal, but they need to go get a starting goaltender. There have been some people who have linked him to Markstrom, some people who have linked him to Ullmark. I think they could go after one of those 2 guys, one of the role guys like Gibson or Saros, but they have a lot of good young prospects. They have a couple of decent, really good draft picks, especially extra first this year. I would not be overly surprised if they move some picks and prospects and try to go and get a goalie upgrade, so I'll definitely look to see if the Senators do that. You also have Chabot and Chychrun. I definitely expect one of those guys to be moved. Now, if they can find a way to get an extension in with Chychrun, potentially in the offseason, or at least get the workings of one that they can get finalized at the start of next year, I definitely do think that they should try and keep Chychrun and move Chabot. But if they can't find a way to keep Chychrun on a longer term basis, I think they do have to consider moving Chychrun before he enters the final year of his deal, as he will be entering it in the offseason. So we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there, but I definitely expect one of Chychrun or Chabot to be moved, because I don't think they need 3 really top 4 left shot defensemen anymore, so I definitely expect one of Chychrun or Chabot to be moved. I think they need to add solid top 4 right shot defensemen, so if they are able to move one of Chychrun or Chabot, I think they should try and use one of those 2 to get a right shot defenseman in return. I know I've been linked to a guy like Rasmus Anderson. I know there's been some talk about Erik Karlsson, although I'm not sure exactly how likely that is to be brought back, but this is definitely a really good team, and I think if they can add another solid top 4 right shot defenseman who can work with guys like Zub and Bernard Docker on the right side, I think that would be a fantastic piece of work there for Senators, so that's another thing I think they should do. Add 1 to 2 top 9 forwards. Last year they moved off the Brinkett, who was a solid top 6 winger, to Detroit, brought in Tarasenko and Kubalik. Tarasenko was then dealt at the deadline. Kubalik is probably going to be moved on after leaving as a free agent, so I expect them to try and get some more top 9 wingers. I mean, they have a really good depth down in center as long as Norris can stay healthy, and Norris, Stützle, and Pinto, but I definitely do think they can use another couple of top 9 wingers, so I definitely think that they should definitely try and go out and add some pieces. Not sure exactly who they would target, but you have a guy like Marshall who's available this year. You have a guy like Jake Gensel. There's definitely a couple of other really good wingers out there this year, so I definitely expect them to try and add a goaltender. On top of that, I think they need to sign Pinto to a long-term deal. We talked about this in the RFA category. Pinto's looked absolutely phenomenal since coming back from his suspension, 27 points in 39 games. I think he has a future as being a really good top 6 forward there for Ottawa, so in my opinion, if they can sign to like a 3 to 5 year deal that has an AV of like $3.5 and $4.5 million, I think that would be a fantastic move for the Ottawa Senators. And one bonus thing here for the Ottawa Senators, I think they do need to find a head coach. Martin is not a long-term solution for their coach, so I do think they need to also try and find a more stable and long-term solution for the coaching position this offseason to try and help them improve. So there's 3 reasons why I think that the Ottawa Senators missed the playoffs. Those are the RFAs, UFAs, and draft capital for this upcoming season for the Senators, and those are the 5 ways I think they can improve in the offseason to try and become a better team for next year. Next, going over to the New Jersey Devils. Now for the Devils, I was expecting them to have a really good season. Personally, I expected them to win the President's Trophy. I was completely wrong about that. They had a really bad season this year, completely worse than last year. I mean, they're hovering around the 500 mark, so they're not doing like an atrocious amount worse than they were, and they're definitely not doing to the level they were 2 years ago, but this is still a really bad loss there for the Devils to fall so far. 3 reasons why I think the Devils did wind up missing the playoffs. One, bad goaltending. Up until the trade deadline, they had Vanacek, Schmid, and Dawes being their 3 goaltenders, and all of them had sub 900 save percentages and above 3 GAA. Vanacek was not pulling it. Schmid didn't look overly good with sitting down to the minors. Dawes was actually probably the best of the 3, and even he wasn't able to keep that team afloat, so those were definitely some problems there for the Devils. Then once the trade deadline happened, Allen and Chychrun came in. They started to play a little bit better, and both of the guys in New Jersey have had above 900 save percentages, so I definitely think Allen and Chychrun have actually been fantastic for that team. But before the trade deadline, which was a real reason as to why this team wound up missing the playoffs, their goaltending was just subpar. So I think the subpar goaltending was definitely one of the reasons why the Devils missed the playoffs this year. 2 was injuries. They had a ton of injuries. Hamilton, who's their top defenseman, only played 20 games this year due to injuries. He's missed the entirety of the season after being injured. You had Hughes miss a whole bunch of time this year due to injuries. He's actually going to miss the final few games due to injuries. You had Chychrun miss a month due to an injury. You had Marino missed time due to injury. Siegenthaler missed time due to injury. There were a couple of other guys as well who missed time due to injury. Nosek, amongst others. So the Devils definitely took a really big blow when it came to injuries. And I think that was another level as to why this team missed the playoffs. I mean, missing Hughes and Chychrun for a month was a really bad blow to that team early on in the season. I think that really did derail them. If they had Hughes and Chychrun at the beginning of the season and Hamilton didn't go down with an injury, maybe the Devils have a different story and they're in a playoff spot right now. But the injuries I do think really did hurt that team. On top of that, the complete low goals against. I mean, they're a bottom 5 team right now in goals against department. We talked about goaltending. We talked about the injuries on the blue line, but I think those 2 things, combined with young guys like Hughes and Nemec getting lots of NHL opportunities this year. Not saying that Hughes and Nemec are bad players, but I think that they're young players that are going to make some mistakes. So letting them have a whole bunch of NHL opportunities was not overly great in my opinion, at least not in the top 4 at consistent levels at this point in time. And also moving on from guys like Severson and Graves in the offseason, I think were really bad moves by Devils, as they really did feel those losses on the blue line. So they had injuries to guys like Marino, Siegenthaler, and Hamilton. The goaltending was not overly great this year to start the season. They had Hughes and Nemec playing extremely big roles this year, given the fact they're both rookie defensemen, and then they also missed Severson and Graves, who they moved on from in the offseason. So given all of those facts, it led to a really bad defensive team, and that's why they're one of the bottom 5 teams in the league defensively. So those are the 3 reasons, in my opinion, why this Devils team did wind up missing the playoffs. At goaltending with guys like Vanacek, Schmid, and Dawes not doing overly good. Not overly great defensively with all the factors we just talked about, and also the injuries, the Chychrun, Hughes, Marino, Siegenthaler, Hamilton, all those injuries really did hurt that team. So those were the main reasons, in my opinion, as to why this Devils team did miss the playoffs. If you look at their significant pending UFAs, RFAs, and draft capital for this upcoming offseason, on the forward group, not overabundance of really significant players. You have Tomas Nosek, who has 6 points in 35 games, Max Willman, who has 4 points in 18 games, and Chris Tierney, who has 12 points in 51 games, all being pending UFAs. They're all bottom 6 forwards. Willman's even more of an AHL forward at this point in time. I could definitely see all those guys be let go. Maybe 1 or 2 of them are brought back on depth 1-year deals, but I would expect most of those guys to be let go. Then you also have on the defense side more depth guys. Brendan Smith, who has 15 points in 62 games. Curtis McDermott, who has 3 points in 44 games with the Avalanche and the Devils. And Nick DeSimone, who has 7 points in 34 games with the Flames and the Devils. All those guys are most likely 7th defensemen. Now McDermott was brought in to be sort of a physical, tough guy to play against. I could see him be brought back given the fact that they still have Mitch Rempe in that division, but I definitely do think that the other guys, Brendan Smith, Nick DeSimone, are very likely to be gone. I could also see McDermott leave, but I would also not be overly surprised if he was extended to stay. You also on the goaltending side have Eric Chychrun, who has not gotten to NHL action, but has been a really good AHL goaltender. I could see him potentially be brought back, but I could also see him leave. You also have Kaapo Kähkönen, who I definitely think will be gone, but he's actually had really good stats, putting up an .898 save percentage and a 3.64 GAA in 37 games with the Devils and the Sharks, so he's actually looked pretty good, but I don't expect him to be back with the Devils. I feel like there's significant pending RFAs. Now, 2 of these guys I don't expect to be brought back due to their 20 or junior team, and that's Michael McLeod and Cal Foote. Now, just like we talked about in our last review with Dubé, Could they potentially be being qualified as RFAs? It's possible. I wouldn't say it's a guarantee, but I think it's definitely a possibility that they could do something like that, where they qualify them as RFAs and keep their rights so that maybe in the future they're found not guilty, they can come back to the NHL. But I think for the time being, they're definitely not going to get an NHL contract with an NHL team, and I could even see him be let go, so we'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there. But Cal Foote, Michael McLeod, two guys who are in the 2021 junior team, definitely look like they're probably going to be not back with the Devils, especially not for next year. On top of that, you also have Dawson Mercer, who's had a fantastic season, 20 goals, 33 points in 81 games. I definitely expect him to be brought back. Nolan Foote, who has a goal in 3 games, has been injured for quite some time this year, but it actually looked pretty good. I definitely expect him to be brought back. You have Shane Bowers, who has 7 games of NHL action this year. Could see him be brought back as a solid fourth-line center. You also have Santeri Hataka, who's had 2 assists in 12 games, was acquired from the Timo Meier trade. Could definitely see him be brought back as like a depth D. And then on the goaltending side, you have 2 really good goaltenders in Schmid and Dawes. Like we said, Schmid's played 19 games this year, Dawes 21. Schmid has an .895 save percentage, Dawes has an .894. Both have a 3.15 GAA. Now, like I said, they could easily be backups next year, so I expect both of these guys to be brought back, but I'm not exactly sure on what type of a contract or how long they'll be brought back for, but I do expect those guys to be brought back, so I'll have to wait and see on that. And lastly, they're going over to current draft capital for Devils for the 2024 season. They don't have a whole bunch of draft picks, 6 in total, that's it. They have their first round pick, no second round picks. They do have theirs in the Jets' third round pick. They also have no fourth round picks. They have theirs in the Avalanche's 5th round pick, their 6th round pick, but they also don't have any 7th round picks for this upcoming draft. So no 7th round picks, 4th round picks, or 2nd round picks. Still have a couple of 3rd and 5th round picks, but still not anything overly significant. And they are going to have a pretty good draft selection of the 1st round pick. So not over a bunch of picks, only 6 in total. So really bad stuff there for the Devils. And lastly here, going over to 5 ways that I can see this Devils team improving in the offseason. First, I think they need to add a starter. Now they moved Vanacek, brought in Kalkinen and Allen at the deadline. That worked pretty good for them. I expect Allen to be brought back as like a 1B goaltender for them next year. I expect Schmid and Dawes to start in the minors and be 3rd stringers for the AHL level. And I would expect them to be called up if there's injuries or if one of the guys are not playing well. But I expect the Devils to go after a starter, whether it be Markstrom, who they've been heavily linked to, or another guy like a Saros, Allmark, or Gibson. I definitely think the Devils will be going after a goaltender this offseason, and I definitely do think that they will be trying to add a starter goaltender. If they can have a starter like a Markstrom, for let's say, and an Allen tandem next year, they're going to be a much better team in goal than they were this past year. So I definitely do think that adding a starter should be high on their list of things they need to do this offseason. Adding a top 4 defenseman. I know Hughes and Nemec are going to be entering the 2nd year of their seasons. I know they still have a pretty good defense, but I think after seeing this year how the losses of Severson and Graves hurt that team, I think they need to go after a top 4 defenseman. I'm not sure what type of defenseman they would go after, but I definitely think that they could add one more top 4 defenseman who's more of a veteran type D to work with those guys. I think they could definitely be in a much better position this year than they were last year, so I definitely think that's something they should do. Also, I think they need to add 1 to 2 top 9 forwards. They moved Tyler Toffoli at the trade deadline. They were able to get a couple of picks for him, but they still wound up moving on for him, so I definitely think they could definitely use another top 9 forward. I'm not exactly sure who they'll go after. If they don't have a whole bunch of draft capital, so maybe they try and go after someone in free agency like a Marshall or something, but I definitely do think that adding another top 9 forward who can play on the top 6, work with guys like Hughes and Hischier, I think would be a very fantastic move there for the Devils. They need to add a new coach. They fired Coach Lindy Ruff earlier in the year. They need to add a new coach. I'm not exactly sure if Travis Green is the long-term answer for the New Jersey Devils, so I definitely do expect them to try and consider adding a new coach. I'm not exactly sure where they would go. Could they go after a guy like Berube, Woodcroft, Evison? It's possible, so they either have to extend Green and make him the new head coach, or to go after a new coach in the offseason, so I'll have to wait and see on that. And lastly, I think they need to get younger. They've been doing this really well over the past while, but I think they can continue to do a little bit more. I mean, if they can have Foote and Holtz into solid top 9 roles next year, if they can have Hughes and Nemec play significant NHL roles next year, maybe get a little more younger too, I think this Devils team could be really scary to face next year. So those are 3 ways I think this Devils team missed the playoffs. Those are the pending UFAs, RFAs, and draft capital for this upcoming season. And those are 5 ways I can see this team improving the offseason to make the playoffs next year. So definitely, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all of this down in the comment section below. What do you think about the Devils and the Senators? Are you surprised both these teams missed the playoffs? Do you agree that those are the 3 reasons why those 2 teams missed the playoffs? What do you think about the UFA UFAs are facing draft capital for this upcoming offseason, and what do you think they can do in the offseason to improve and get back to the playoffs? Definitely, I'll take your thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. So I'm going to talk for today. Remember to like this video, and if you'd like to subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support. I'll never be able to with you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Definitely leave a comment down in the comment section below so I can discuss in today's video. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so if you check that out, I'll leave a link down in the description below, and I can't wait to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.